This is the OBSBOT Tail Air PTZ camera with AI motion tracking, and this is what it can do. That's right, this camera has built-in subject motion tracking so it can track and follow you around your space if you want it to. So let's talk about it. The OBSBOT Tail Air PTZ camera is a very compact PTZ or pan tilt zoom camera for recording, use as a webcam, or for use in live productions like live streams. You can fully control the camera with your smartphone, which gives you a really nice set of tools from a device, your phone, that's probably already in your pocket. Now, PTZ cameras aren't new. I use them a lot in my live event production work, but most PTZ cameras are larger, heavier, and a lot more expensive. This one is pretty tiny. PTZ cameras are probably less common in home studios or YouTube studios, but that depends on what you do in your studio and if you need or want to move around without manually repositioning the camera every time. You can choose yourself as the subject being tracked, or someone else, of course, so you can just move around, walk, talk, and have the camera track you automatically. The subject tracking kind of acts like a second person operating the camera. And I see this camera definitely being able to be taken out and used on live streams. And you can turn the tracking on or off using the smartphone app, or you can enable or disable the tracking and other features like starting and stopping recording and zooming in or out by giving the camera hand gestures. So you can be completely hands-free. More on all of that in just a bit. And the camera has a built-in battery, so it can be completely wire-free in some situations. And the subject tracking is really pretty good. I was impressed at how well it works, but it is optional. You don't have to use that feature, and you can turn it on or off pretty much at any time a couple of different ways. And with its surprisingly small size overall, it can fit in your bag and you can take it just about anywhere. Now, OBSBOT did send me this camera for review. No money changed hands. I do get to keep the camera, but all the opinions in this video are mine, and OBSBOT does not get to see this video before it's posted. So this camera has a ton of features, and I'm going to try to cover most of the features and some quirks of this camera. There's a lot to unpack, so I'll cover what I can in an as digestible, succinct, but as informative way that I can so that this information hopefully is helpful to you. Because let's face it, you may have come to this video to see if you want to purchase this camera. That's not for me to tell you. I'll just try to provide as much information and examples of the video and audio that it can record as possible, and you can make up your own mind. So again, this camera is fully controllable from either your smartphone, but also from an iPad or tablet or a laptop computer, and you can even use an Elgato Stream Deck to control the camera. It can record internally, which is the recording you're watching right now, and output video via HDMI at the same time, which I'm also doing, which you can't see. And you can use it directly as a webcam via USB for your virtual meetings or live streams. And in some situations, you can use it wirelessly as a webcam as well. And it even has optional NDI video, but you will have to purchase an NDI license for about $99 to use that NDI feature. But if you're already in an NDI video distribution network for your live streams, this camera will fit right in. But even without the NDI license, you can fully control the camera wirelessly over a standard computer network and still see the live camera view, again, on your smartphone or on your computer. And there is an optional USB-C to Ethernet dongle to be able to plug it into a wired network connection as well. It has a 1/1.8-inch 4K resolution sensor with a fixed aperture of 1.8. Internal recording goes to a micro SD card slot on the side, and one of the only negatives that I found is that the SD card slot and the card itself is recessed in a bit, and for me, it's very hard or almost impossible to insert or remove the card without some sort of small screwdriver or other small tool, but I guess that can keep the card from accidentally being popped out if you grab the camera wrong. The camera can record in 4K resolution up to 30 frames per second, or you can record 1080p up to 60 frames per second, but at the higher frame rates of 48 frames per second, 50, and 60 frames per second, the image crops in and the field of view gets a bit more narrow. If you record 4K internally on the camera, the HDMI output is then limited to 1080p, and conversely, if you want 4K on the HDMI output, you'll have to drop down the internal recording to 1080p. The HDMI output is via a micro HDMI slot and can be used obviously for outputting the video signal to a video monitor or over to a switcher or recorder like a Blackmagic A10 Mini if you want to use the camera in live productions or live streams, or over to something like a USB capture card, or really obviously any device that you want to send the signal to via HDMI. The field of view of the lens is about 72 to 73 degrees, which is roughly the equivalent of a 22 to 23 millimeter lens on a full frame camera system, and the camera even states 23 millimeters on the front of the lens. I actually found the field of view to be just a touch wider, closer to the field of view of my Tamron 17 to 28 on my Sony a7 IV, when that lens was at about 22 millimeters. And here's a view of both cameras situated in the same location. And I'm actually zoomed in just a bit on the recording on the tail air because I'm using a teleprompter. So if I undo the zoom there, you can see just a little bit of vignetting from my teleprompter up in the corners, but it works fairly well. But I'm going to go back to a preset position there to try to get rid of some of that vignetting. So hopefully you can't tell I'm using a teleprompter. But as I just showed, you can zoom with the tail air camera, but it is a digital zoom, not an optical zoom. So it just crops in on the camera's sensor. So it's not quite the same as zooming in with a standard camera lens, but the zoom function works well enough and is fairly smooth. And if I do this, I can show you kind of one of my positions there where it's zooming in and you get this shot, but we'll go back to my default position for now. And of course, with any digital zoom, you may encounter lower quality images the more you zoom in, and all of the zoom changes do get recorded that way as well as get sent out that way via the HDMI port. You can put the camera's focus and exposure in full auto mode or put it in manual mode so you can tweak all the settings yourself. All of that has to be done with either a smartphone and the OBSBOT Start app on iOS or Android, or you can use the OBSBOT Center app on a desktop computer. The app really does so many things. It really is full control of the camera. You can manually set the pan, tilt, digital zoom, and focus. You have exposure control like shutter speed and ISO, although it is a fixed aperture of 1.8, so you can't close the aperture down to take in less light or open it up to take in more light. And the ISO is only selectable by doubling the ISO. So ISO 100, then it goes to 200, then 400, then 800. Then 1600 and so on. So you can't choose ISO 320 or 640 if that's what you would need for good exposure. You'll have to either change the shutter speed or add or reduce the lighting in your scene. You can change the white balance. You can color correct the image before you record, add sharpening. You can flip the image. You can change the audio settings, change frame rates, video codecs, turn on face autofocus and face auto exposure. You can start and stop recording with the app. You can view and watch your recordings. The app will pass the live audio from the camera back to the speakers on your phone or headphones hooked up to your smartphone so you can hear what audio the camera is capturing. That feature is really awesome. No more guessing if the audio is good just by trying to look at the meters. You can hear it right here on your phone. And you can also hear the audio if you play back a file from the app that you recorded on the camera. And as you can see, it has very little latency, and the app stays connected very well. As I said, the most unique feature is the AI motion tracking. This is the first tracking camera that I've ever used, and as I said, the tracking works very well. If you move around your space a lot while live streaming, or if you need to take this camera or a few of these to a small conference or event, it can track someone automatically. Now it can, like any tracking on any camera, lose a subject if they get maybe obscured by something else for too long. That's the nature of AI or artificial intelligence. We're letting the camera make some decisions, like if it's tracking what you want it to track. But when there's a single person in the frame, it holds the tracking on that person very well, and you can even select an object and have it track that object instead of a person. Also, as I said, you can turn off the AI tracking and just manually put the camera in any position you want. To enable the AI tracking, you can either use a smartphone and just double tap on a subject, and it puts a green box around that subject and will then track them. Or you can use the built-in hand gestures to enable and disable the subject tracking, or do other things like stop and start recording, or as I showed you, zoom in or out. Sometimes it takes a second. There it goes. I can see it out of the corner of my eye down there. We'll do that again. We'll zoom back out to my home position. We'll disable the tracking by double tapping because you can see the corner of my teleprompter there. So I'll go back to my preset position and keep talking. Now, the most important thing about activating the hand gestures is to make sure you give the gesture with your hand or hands up next to your face, kind of like this. There, now the motion tracking is on. I tried doing the hand gestures by, holding up my hand and covering up my face, and it just doesn't work that way. It kind of wants to see your face along with the gesture next to your face, and now motion tracking is off. And again, I will go back to my preset position using the phone. So just face the camera and hold up either your right or left hand up next to your face with the appropriate hand gesture. And that seems to be what the tail air is looking for to activate those gestures. And the gestures are as follows. A flat hand next to your face will activate or deactivate subject tracking. So we'll go like this. Subject tracking is enabled. It's tracking me. I can see it down there. And that will then turn it off again. Go back to my preset position. The OK symbol next to your face will start and stop recording. I'm going to be very careful with that one right now because I am recording using the camera. And you get an audible beep on the camera when the camera starts or stops recording. So let's give this a try. I'll cut to my side camera so you can hear it. And now the OBSBOT has stopped recording, and I will just start recording by giving that same hand gesture because the camera is still on and it will still recognize my hand gesture despite the fact that it's not actually recording right now. So we'll do that. And now we are back to recording all using that hand gesture. One hand in an L shape next to your face will make the camera zoom in on you. And holding it again in an L shape will make the camera zoom back out. Holding two hands in an L shape next to your face and then moving your hands out or in will have the camera zoom out or in. And you can change the direction of the zoom with this hand gesture in the app. We'll give it a try. Recognizes it, we'll zoom in. And then we'll do that again. We'll zoom out. Did it go? That one takes a little practice and it doesn't always do exactly what you want, but at least it is an option. And when the camera recognizes your hand gesture, the light on the front will blink 3 times. That indicator light on the front of the camera has a few visual settings so you can know what the camera is doing. Solid green, the camera is on and working, but no other functions like recording or AI tracking are on. Flashing green means the camera is currently recording, so I'm looking at a flashing green light right there. A solid blue light means the AI tracking is on, but the camera is not recording. If the blue light is blinking, it means AI tracking is on and the camera is recording. And when the light is this purple magenta color, it means that the tail air is in the standalone mode with the connect via cellular option. And there's a set of 4 LED lights on the front which indicate battery level. Now by default, once the AI tracking finds you or a subject, it kind of keeps your face at the center of the frame, which can look weird. This image seems like I'm just a little too low in the frame, and I didn't think this looked very good, but you can reset your composition using the app so that it keeps your face more in the upper part of the image, and we'll go here on the app. You can see it's tracking me. We'll go on the little A button down there and then click on this little grid, and you get a couple of yellow crosshairs. So if I just move the horizontal crosshair up to the top, it then keeps my face more towards the top of the frame. And you can even set the composition maybe to the left or to the right, creating that little crosshairs somewhere else. Forgive the teleprompter view that you can see right there obscuring the image. But as you can see, even though it's tracking me, it is keeping me off to, I guess, what is that? The right side of the image for you, just in case you had the camera in a position where you wanted the subject to be more off to the side one way or the other. So as I've been using here in the smartphone app, you can set 3 customizable location presets that will store pan, tilt, and zoom information. And you can use this to quickly have the camera go between all 3 of those presets for something like a live stream where you need to cut between 2 presenters on a stage. and also have a wide shot, or for maybe streaming at home, maybe to have a wide shot of your studio, but have a second position, maybe focused on your desk to show a close-up of a product. Or I actually set one here to where it does this kind of, I don't know, newscaster look, puts me on one side and, a little more room over to the right side here. And I'll go back to my location preset number 2. And if I go to preset number 1 there, this is the fully zoomed out version. Again, seeing a little bit of that teleprompter. So I just set my position 2 for this recording to default to zoom in just a touch to where we get rid of almost all the vignetting. But again, I got to have a teleprompter. And the app even has a built-in video multi-view switcher to switch between your preset zoom and position locations. And it also gives you some alternate views or angles if it finds faces or something you might like. Again, some of that AI. So we get there by clicking on this little icon right there. And then we can see the little box with the red around it. That's what's being recorded. That's what's on air. And it says right there on air. We can click on wide and it goes there. And as you can see here, and the view, it found my face, so it suggests that view. We can click there, and it goes to a really zoomed up, although not quite centered view of my face. But either way, let's just go back to my P2 position and continue on. There's an optional physical remote control you can get for the camera just in case you didn't want to use your smartphone, but that remote does not come with the camera. And as I alluded to, it even has a plugin for Elgato's Stream Deck software, so you can control this camera from a Stream Deck, and I've got that loaded up here. You can see my screen. I do have the OBSBOT Center app open because it needs that to be open for the Stream Deck software to communicate, but right here on my Stream Deck, I've got my 3 position presets. I can hit number 3, and you can see the image zoom in. I can hit number 1. It goes back to my wide position, where you can see, again, that teleprompter, and let's go back to position 2. And there you go. You can do a lot of stuff here with the Tail Air's Stream Deck plugin. You can zoom in a little bit here. You can reset the zoom to where it just goes back to the wide position and do lots of things there with that software plugin. Or you can use the BitFocus Companion app and the Visca protocol to control the camera as well. And the OBSBOT Center app for desktop operating systems also gives you full control of the camera. And the desktop app also gives you a live view of the camera, but you can only see a live view on your phone or in the desktop app. You can't view the live view from both apps at the same time, but you can have them both running at the same time. I can still have the live view here on my phone, but if I go down here to view and control, I can still use the software control on my desktop to control the camera, and all those changes take effect on the recording, the HDMI output, and it will give you a view here on the camera if I zoom in or out right there. So again, having functionality in both locations is pretty cool. It does have an onboard microphone, and here's what that sounds like as the camera sits about 2 to 2.5 feet away from me, and I've taken the teleprompter away so that you get a little bit more clear audio when I'm using the internal microphone. But it does have an additional 3.5 millimeter input jack on the side so that you can ingest a different audio signal, like I'm ingesting this Rode Wireless Go lavalier microphone into the camera and getting better audio that way. And I would be a little more cautious using the 3.5 millimeter audio input on the camera, and make sure you listen very carefully before you record, because even though in some of my tests, my audio meters here in the app looked good and weren't clipping on the meters, some of my audio was actually distorted when the meters were only at about 75% of maximum. Hey, 2, check. So I'll just talk a little bit. Hey, 2, check. So I'll just talk a little bit. So you're best keeping the audio input meter here hitting about 50. You can see I've got about 50 to 60% here, and make sure you listen and test and verify before you record. And I would always recommend having an external recording like I'm doing now using my Rode Wireless Go for backup. Or if you're a solo filmmaker and want to take the camera outside and be out in nature, you could use something like a wireless lapel mic like this Wireless Go 2 that I'm using right now, all while still having the camera track and follow you, so you don't have to bring someone else with you to operate the camera in case you want to walk stoically off into the distance. Or you can always send a mixed audio signal into the 3.5mm port from something like a larger audio mixer that's taking in multiple microphones, maybe some playback music for a live stream, and just send that mixed signal into the camera directly. The tail layer has a built-in battery, so you can use it without any cables in some situations for just about 2 hours while running on that battery and while recording internally and outputting video via HDMI. But it also has a USB-C port so that you can use it for charging or for constant power when you need to use the camera on longer productions. And that USB-C port allows communication with your computer for use as a webcam, so you can use it in Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Google Meets, or your meeting platform of choice. I found the best and most stable way to use it as a webcam is to hook up the camera with the included USB-C high-speed cable, then enable UVC mode in the app, which doesn't require any specialized software or drivers and therefore will immediately work with any video software. Although you can use it as a webcam completely wirelessly over your local network by connecting to the camera using the OBSBOT Center app first, then enabling the virtual camera icon in that desktop app. This option did cause the video feed in OBS to freeze some of the time after a few minutes, but not always. It could have been my network or my Wi-Fi speed at the time, and it seems to have gotten better, I think maybe after I updated the firmware. But if I want to use it as a webcam, I usually just plug it in via USB and use it in UVC mode. The camera connects to your smartphone either via your local Wi-Fi network in your home or office using the live stream via Wi-Fi option, or you can connect wirelessly to the camera in a standalone mode with your smartphone via the cellular option in the smartphone app in case you're in a location that doesn't have access to a local Wi-Fi network. And here's a perfect example of that. I'm out here in the middle of this field where there is definitely no Wi-Fi hotspot or wireless routers generating a Wi-Fi network that I can connect to. So I'm just connected with my phone directly using the cellular option in the OBSBOT Start app. And that way I can still have full control of the camera here from my phone. We can turn off tracking, and we can just go to manually pan this. I can go to manually zoom in, and again still have full control of this thing while I'm out here in the middle of a field. It has a 1/4-20 mount on the bottom for mounting wherever you need, even upside down, and the camera will automatically sense it's upside down and flip the image for you. Although I don't think you can manually flip it back. I think when it's upside down, it just knows it automatically flips it. And so you'll just have that view, although you may want to go into the camera and reverse the image horizontally to make sure your field of view is what the camera is seeing. It comes in a very nice and protective EVA foam case. It comes with about a 1 meter USB-C cable, a USB-C to USB-A adapter, and a USB-C splitter, which is used when you want to use the optional USB-C to RJ45 network adapter. This little dual USB port adapter will allow you to provide power to the camera via USB-C, but then also plug in a USB accessory, again like that Ethernet dongle. But if you have a router or switch that provides PoE or power over Ethernet, that PoE power will pass through the USB RJ45 dongle and you wouldn't need the dual USB adapter. Just to note though that the USB-C to RJ45 dongle does not come with the camera. It is an accessory you'll have to purchase separately. Also to note, the camera does not come with a USB power brick, so you will have to provide your own USB power source or just use a USB port on your computer. But if you want a separate power brick, you'll have to buy one, and you'll need one that can provide at least 5 volts and 2 amps of USB power, which is pretty standard most days on the little USB power bricks. The camera retails and sells regularly for about $500. Not in everyone's budget, I understand, especially if you only use it as a webcam, but it's a good price for a 4K capable camera. And I think when you add up all of the controls and options you get by using the smartphone app and the AI tracking tools and the HDMI output, the price seems about right for the features it offers. So that's a lot of functionality in this little camera package, and I haven't even scratched the surface of the functionality of the app. It has a pretty good image for its small sensor size. You're not going to get the sharpness and low light capabilities or clarity that you would get from a full frame camera, or even my Sony FX30's APS-C sensor, or even my Panasonic GH5's Micro Four Thirds sensor. But I don't expect it to get the same image as larger, more expensive cameras. I did find that despite the camera being in continuous autofocus and with face autofocus enabled, that sometimes my face looked slightly out of focus and the background looked a little bit more in focus, or at the very least, the focus looked a little bit soft. It was minor and you can sharpen it a bit in post, but I noticed it here and there, so just look out for that. Also, I guess one of the things you have to keep in mind is that there's no monitor on this camera at all, and there are no other physical controls on the camera other than the power button. So you have to connect the camera to either your smartphone or your computer to adjust any of the settings like exposure or color correction. You can always plug a small monitor into the HDMI port to see the image, but you can't make any adjustments without first hooking it up again to a smartphone or your computer. However, that's typical of almost all PTZ cameras. To change anything, you usually have to use either a web browser, the camera's own software, or a separate hardware controller. So not really different, just something to note. And lastly, I did notice a bit of ghosting or burn-in when the camera moves. And what I mean by this is if you'll watch kind of these lights or some areas that are static right now, well, when I move the camera, let's just go in here into the app and move it around. Try to move it a little bit fast so you can see some of the ghosting that I'm talking about. And what I'm looking at in this shot are kind of these static things in the background. This is a subwoofer that's a light, obviously. And if I grab and move the camera, you can kind of see how some of those items have this ghosted image that stays on the screen for a minute. And, that could be due to the variable bit rate that the camera is recording in. That's kind of how H.264 works. It's just, if something in the background doesn't change, it won't automatically update the pixels until it senses a change, and maybe it just can't sense them fast enough and rewrite them, so you can get a little bit of ghosting. Is it something you're going to notice on a live stream once it gets converted and sent out over the internet and recompressed? Maybe, maybe not, but it's something to look out for. The AI tracking works really well. It runs for about 2 hours on battery. You can ingest your own audio, record it 4K, fully control the camera with the smartphone app, the color, the exposure, the positioning. And so with all of that and the portability of this camera, it makes for a very enticing option for someone that may be a solo content creator or needs to move around their space and use the motion tracking features, or use multiple tail airs and film or record a live event or live stream that event, or if you just want to make your weekly virtual meetings that much more technically or artistically superior. I don't know. I think that's it for now. Hopefully this information has been helpful to you. I'll leave a link below to the tail air if you want to check it out. Be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons, which definitely helps me in my journey and goal to be able to bring you more content like this. Thank you so much. See you in the next one.